So they're going to drag it out as long as possible for two reasons. One is they got the grift. He's got to get the grift, and he's raising money off these basically what they're fake lawsuits in a lot of places. Like in Pennsylvania, they'll file a lawsuit that applies to 500 ballots, but then they'll go to their email list and say Donald Trump is fighting in Pennsylvania to count all legal votes. Send us money. So one is you got to keep the grift going. Two is Trump is clearly, he thinks he's running again in 2024, whether he's alive or in jail, and he can't do it, beside the point. He thinks right now that he's running again in 2024, right? So he wants to go out, he wants to exit stage saying, they stole the election, it was all rigged, it was the swamp, but I fought to the very, very end. And they want to create that the story, right? So this all requires this just to drag out as long as possible. I mean, not sure what to do. And you know what? One thing that Trump has really exposed is just how frail our institutions really are. That they really have been propped up by tradition and the expectation of common decency and respect for our nation's institutional democratic norms and ideals. And so when you have somebody like Trump and his crew that have zero respect for that, and a Republican Party that is afraid, terrified of Donald Trump, or, the best you can say is that they're terrified. There's a lot of Republicans that are actually with Trump in those undemocratic, small d, democracy, anti-democracy views that Trump has. So,
like Lady G.
I wish. One of the things that would have been nice to have a Senate majority, because at best we'll have 50-50, which will be better than McConnell being in charge, but it's going to be very hard to make anything pass in a 50-50 Senate. I was hoping that we'd at least be able to shore up those institutions, sort of institutionalize in law some of these ideals, stuff like releasing your tax returns and not profiting from, if you own a business, you can't steer a business that way if you're in government. Trump has been enriching his companies by 300 golfing outings to his properties in the last 4 years. Things like the independence of the Justice Department. So there were things that were always assumed, and Trump just blew those norms out of the water, exposed that there was no teeth. He just broke the law, and the law had no teeth. And the response was, well, the constitutional remedy for this was impeachment. And obviously that does not work when you have this kind of partisanized country where one party is just totally fine with law breaking. So there has to be real consequences, real money, jail, that sort of thing. And that needs to be written into new law. And so I was hoping that we'd have a Senate that could sort of shore up these institutions, because I'm not so much worried about Trump right now. He'll be gone from the immediate, from the White House. He's not going to be there in January. I'm more worried. I'm not even worried that much about 2024 Trump. And I think we talked about it last week, Mark. I'm never underestimating Trump again. I actually think he has a superpower. So I don't think he would be easy to beat in 2024. So not saying that. But what I'm really worried about is the next fascist ideologue who is smart, like a Putin-style Republican who will come in and actually do real damage because he's not so dumb. I mean, Mark, Donald Trump told us his plan in Philadelphia, like that they were going to challenge all the ballots that came in after Election Day, right? So what the Democrats do is they made sure they got all the ballots in before Election Day. Had he not done that, people may have been like, I can wait.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw in Philadelphia, only 500 ballots arrived after Tuesday.
Yeah, not a big deal.
So what happens when you have a Trump type of ideologue fascist without the dumbness of Donald Trump? That's what I'm afraid of.
Should Lady G, speaking of jail, should Lady G be prosecuted? I mean, he's literally, well, he or she is, he says Lady G, so I'm not sure. Lady G is tampering. He called the Georgia Secretary of State and tried to talk him into throwing out ballots. That's not tampering. That's not against the law.
Lady G. I actually didn't get it until right now.
Oh,
I was a little slow on the uptake there. I was slow on the uptake. I was going to pass it off, but no. Okay, I'm owning it. I'm owning it. I'm a little slow this morning.
Okay, that's okay.
Yes. Yes, and then he claimed, "Oh, I talked to all these Secretary of States. They all came out and said no, he didn't." And the thing is that it's actually kind of remarkable, Mark, that we have this Republican Secretary of State in Georgia who is under assault by everybody, and he's actually trying to do a good thing. He's actually trying to do his job, and it is bizarre, to say the least, how surprised I am at a Republican not trying to subvert democracy. And yeah, the fact that he had other staff on the call when Senator Graham called him asking to throw out ballots is sort of takes it away from he said, she said, right? There's actual evidence, there's corroboration, and that that Republican, I forget his name because it's like a long German name, he made sure he covered his tracks, that he covered his bases to make sure that he had witnesses to that conversation. And I suspect he did because I'm sure a lot of other Republicans are trying to do the same thing, trying to subvert that vote count.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, but like you said, he's Republican. He's not going along with it. He probably realizes there's life after Trump and Lady G.
Sure, maybe it's democracy. Maybe there's some of them left that still actually respect that. Now, for sure, you're going to see him be challenged in 2022. I mean, he's up for re-election, and you better believe that the Trumpkins are going to throw a challenger because he didn't steal an election. So he may pay a price. I hope not. I hope he survives, and I hope we beat him with a Democrat in the general election. But that's what the Republican Party is left with. I mean, it's actually whatever happens with Trump, this Republican Party is tainted with it, and they're not going to be able to pretend that it didn't happen, that this never existed.
You mentioned Trump's superpower, which you have identified as the hidden deplorables, who surface when he's on the ballot. Mm-hmm. When he's not on the ballot, maybe not. So that's his superpower. What happens January 5th, do you think, in Georgia, with Trump not on the ballot? Does that help Ossoff and Warnock win Georgia?
So I want to be very, 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 very clear that it's a theory, not a prediction, not even an expectation. Okay. The way I'm framed, I'm assuming they all turn out. Every Republican that voted in two Tuesdays ago, they're all going to turn out. We have to assume that, because we have to make sure we turn out everybody that we turned out and more if we can, because this is the Senate is at stake. The ability of Biden to do anything is at stake. So we have to do that. That's my assumption. That's my assumption. Now, if my theory is true, there might be a drop off, and obviously that would make our job easier to win, but also it would mean that we're looking better for 2022. If Republicans can't turn out the Trumpy base when Trump is not on the ballot, it makes it easier for us to make gains. If they turn out anyway, and we're about to find out in January, if they turn out regardless of whether Trump is on the ballot, then things are going to be pretty tough in 2022, especially since the Senate races that we have to pick up are going to be places like Iowa and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, states that are close or are Republican-leaning, Republican edge. I'll say this, Mark, they didn't turn out in 2019. They didn't turn out in 2018. They didn't turn out in 2017. So recent history suggests, like, I didn't think they were going to turn out again, right, in 2020, because they hadn't been turning out, but they did turn out. This hidden deplorable has turned out. I think we talked about this last week, Mark, but I just, the numbers we're talking about. Donald Trump won Georgia in 2016 by 5 points. And from 2016 to 2020, he got 360,000 new votes. 360,000 more Georgians turned out for Donald Trump in 2020 than did in 2016, right? And he won by 5 points. It should have been enough. Should have been enough. But Stacey Abrams and allied organizations and amazing Georgia volunteers. I mean, that Georgia liberals are like the best organized in the country right now. They turned out an extra 590,000 votes in just 4 years, which again, like every time I think about that, just blows my mind. That's how we went from losing by 5 points to winning by a sliver, even though Donald Trump got 360,000 more votes. Now, that 360,000 more votes, they didn't turn out for Jack Kemp in 2018. They didn't turn out. These are Trump voters. Will they turn out for Carrie Loeffler and Purdue to milk a toast, nothing burger, standard Republicans? That's the big question. The other one is, are people going to turn out? That's the other big one. And so we turn out our people, and if we do things right, Joe Biden won. So if we do what we need to do and get our people out, we're going to win no matter what. But I would like some breathing room. I'm hoping they don't turn out, because I think that would bode well for 2022 and moving ahead until the next Trump shows up.